show and hold the line right here on Zone Radio 88.5, the voice of the valley. And I want to say well done to Kelly Hoffman, 14 years old, and she anchored that first hour with style. She really did. Took a whole lot of requests from people on our WhatsApp, which was very cool. Went right into the news, and she has now handed the studio back to me, and it's time for us to do the Psych Zone. And on the Zoom this afternoon, we have Charissa and that fellow Jeff Kahn. And hello, both of you.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome. You can talk, Jeff. You can, yeah. If you move your lips, sound will come out.
Ladies first. I always was told to ladies first.
That's exactly what I was trying to get at.
Yeah. Well, okay. Thank you.
All right.
The one who with the long hair. Yes, he tells me.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I'm very excited. I just want to acknowledge that we're actually broadcasting from Spa Distribution because we did a webinar earlier, and they're very kind. That's why I've got this lovely. You won't be able to see it. I'm sitting underneath Table Mountain now, but we want to just acknowledge them because they've given us this room available.
Spa Distribution. Well, thank you. That's very nice of them. Never heard of them.
Yeah, the spa shop. It's a spa shop.
Oh, Charissa, you'll learn.
Don't laugh.
All right. Okay. Nice makeup, by the way. All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. So we got about, look, Zoom's going to turn us off in about 40 minutes time. So we got to get through this. We are going to be talking about fear. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Fear during the time of COVID and the impact it has in our relationship and the impact it has in our workplace.
The floor is yours.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought we'd talk about this topic because there's so much fear going around with the uncertainty, but we have, I'm dealing with a lot of people, fear of getting COVID, fear of people dying around us that are close to us, fear of our families getting sick, losing friends and family, and still even more fear of us, fear of job loss, fear of the vaccine, fear of dating in the time of COVID, fear of visiting friends. We've lost the whole connection. The social distancing has made us really distant from our friends mentally as well. So I want to start talking about the fear, which is lead to anxiety and lots of other stresses for us at this time. So, Richard, there are two kinds of fears. There's real and imagined. Okay, so that is really critical, and it has an impact on us long term if we actually don't deal with it. So that is really, really, really important because it can actually impact our immune system, and we know what happens when that impacts there. The chronic fear can lead to headaches, migraines, immune system dysfunctions, endocrine system dysfunctions, sleep or weight. There's so many people, we spoke about this before, struggling with insomnia. And the worst part for me is that fear can affect the ability to learn. It actually affects our brain. That's powerful. That's how powerful it is. And we don't want that to happen.
All right. So what you're saying to me is if we fear this thing, correct me if I'm wrong, if we fear this thing, we're going to make ourselves sick. So should I be fearing COVID-19?
Well, if the fear is continuous and it goes on for a year, like it has right now, our pandemic's been going on for a year, that there's a lot of us stuck in that fear mode and stuck in that frenzied mode and stuck in that anxiety mode, which is impacting on us mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and then it's going to impact on our relationships as well, unless we can take control of it.
Because this thing about it affecting the immune system scares me, because this virus attacks the immune system. And so if we're going to go around, no, this is like, it may sound like a cynical kind of question. If I'm going to go around being dead scared of COVID-19, the chances are then that I'm going to get it.
Well, I don't want to be put on camera to actually say that, but there is a link between the mind and the body. And we all know people who are stressed all the time get sick. You know, they may have a runny nose, they have coughs, they have issues, they are stressed. And eventually, we've spoken about this before, it can lead to burnout, adrenal fatigue, exhaustion, because our mind and our body is connected. And every thought that we think impacts on our body. So if we're going around being negative and fearful, it will impact on our immune system. And let's talk about adrenal fatigue and burnout. If we're stressed all the time and we're fearful and we're in an anxiety state, our body starts reacting, especially long term. So then we've said this before, we have irritability, we have tiredness, we have headaches. It leads to the second stage where there's ulcers, and it leads to a final stage heart attacks, strokes, immune system down, cancers. So we need to be very cautious what stage we're in, Richard, really.
Right. So what do you say to the person? I get what you're saying, and I don't dispute, I don't disagree with it. But what do you say to the person who works best under pressure? Is under pressure the same as fear or stress? The person that really only performs when the deadline is like at number 99, that person who puts himself under that kind of stress and pressure, are they at risk, or is this different to what you're talking about?
That's a brilliant question, Richard.
I know.
Because a little bit of stress that motivates us and puts us under pressure is more like the type A personality. Go, 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 go. The perfectionist, they love to work, they leave everything to the last minute, they challenge themselves, and then they actually get through it, and it's a wonderful feeling. That kind of stress is important, and that is good stress. But then comes the negative stress. Hey, Jeff, you want to say something about it? Then comes the impact of it's not healthy for us. How long can we go? How long can we push the car without petrol? Because then we get exhausted. We're pushing our bodies, we're pushing our minds, we're pushing our families. And that's when the danger comes in. And it's not healthy stress and anxiety anymore.
Yeah.
All right. So,
well,
sorry, Jeff, carry on.
And I agree with that 100%. There's positive and negative stress. It's like if you are going on stage and you have that little bit of a jittery excitement about being on stage or going just before you go and do a show or whatever it is, that's positive stress. But when it comes to negative, where it starts impacting on your health, that's negative stress. And that's what we're seeing now. Some people are handling their stresses now as we go, their fears and their stresses now, they're handling it well, and they're thriving, some people. And some people are really, really having a rough time and getting sick and mentally sick and unwell as well. So yeah, there's a positive and negative. So I agree with Charissa 100%. So and your question is valid, because am I handling positive, am I in positive stress mode, or I'm in negative stress mode? If I'm in positive stress mode, I'm doing okay and I'm getting stuff done. If I'm in negative stress mode, I've got to be careful, because I'm heading probably for an ulcer and sickness and maybe a breakdown and maybe depression, and that's when it starts getting nasty. And then if I'm in a family situation, I'm spreading it into the family, and all of a sudden, you know what anger is. Anger is either fear or frustration or both, and then the anger starts, and then we're going on that path. So yeah, negative and positive stress, absolutely.
Can we tell the difference, Charissa, between what Jeff has termed positive stress and negative stress? That's one question. The other question I want to ask is, stress and fear the same thing?
No, because your fears can be, the two impact on each other, and the two are absolutely interconnected. But then they can strive separately. Oh, I'm a little bit stressed, you know me, I'm driving on the road, I'm a little bit stressed and I'm a little bit fearful, but it's not going to be so much that it's going to impact on my whole, you know, I'm going to have a breakdown. But what's very important, I do want to talk about here, Richard, is that, you know, I love to come back to the mind and the powerfulness of the mind. And anyone who's watched The Secret or anything,
Jeff, you can sit this one out.
You're so kind.
Just the power of the mind.
Richard.
Carry on, Charissa.
And I've lost my train of thought. Just
the
kidding.
power of the mind.
The power of the mind is so strong. When you fear, I can see Jeff laughing. When you fear something, you're actually bringing it to you. So I just want to put out, if you're putting out these fearful thoughts, I want to remind you I want to tell you, I'm reminded of a story years and years ago. I worked in the burns unit. That was my master's thesis. It was a horrific thing. But we did some amazing work, and there was a lovely lady who did a PhD in the burns unit and pain on the back, But we were asked to present to a whole lot of doctors, and this lady says to me over and over and over again, Charissa, I'm going to mess up. It's the doctors. Oh, Charissa, I'm going to mess up. Charissa, I know I am actually going to stand in front of you. And I'd say, no, you're absolutely brilliant. You're not going to mess up. Charissa, I'm going to lose my thoughts. Do you think she went up there and she did well?
No.
So no. So we've got to be very fearful of what we're putting out and what we're attracting to ourselves. So we need, when we're talking about fears, we have to look at the mindset.
All right. Now, I want to come back to what Jeff said earlier on. He said, he made mention of the fact that you're about to go on stage and you've got the butterflies in the stomach, and that's a kind of good stress he was mentioning. Now, I'm kind of I agree with you that you know, you've got fear and you've got stress, and probably one leads to the other or vice versa. But when you've got these butterflies in the stomach, what I tell young candidates when I'm teaching on radio is that is a good thing. That's a good energy. And the idea is, and I always use this terminology, is to get the butterflies to fly in formation. That's what you've got to focus on. The butterflies are a good thing. Get them fly in formation, and you should be okay. When it comes to fear, is there a similar type of thing that one can do when we're talking about facing a fear? In other words, let's say, and we're talking about this COVID thing. Let's talk about COVID. If I have got this like paranoia about COVID and about getting it and interacting with people to a point where it becomes, I lock myself away from the world almost. And I'm too scared to, even open the tap because I'm scared that something's going to be this. So you get into the state of mind, which then is going to become destructive physically, correct? Is there a way of dealing with that, which is similar to the butterflies in formation kind of scenario that I've just mentioned, that people can do?
Yes, I'm not sure if Jeff's answering me. Can I go back to the stage, the butterflies, and going live? And a lot of live TV and live radio, there's always the butterflies. But the mind is going to tell you that butterflies is good and I'm well prepared. And once you start going, you breathe. Yeah. Or it can take control of you and you want to throw up, excuse me saying that, and your hands start shaking and you're dripping and you can't think and your mind starts going and you fluff up your tongue. It's the same thing with COVID. If we're not going to take control of that, then we're going to come OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, looking over your shoulder, every little cough, you're going to get freaked out, you get into a frenzied zone. I don't know if you agree, Jeff.
Yeah, I think it's all about the levels of anxiety that you have and how you handle it. So it's not the problem that's the problem. It's the way you handle the problem that's the problem. And if you're fearful, I mean, I posted something the other day. It says, do what you fear most and you control fear. So we need to try and control the fear, and that is all about attitude. It's about saying, okay, I realize this thing is big and it's affecting me, but you know what? I'm its boss, and I'm going to take charge of it, and I'm going to work on it and not in it. Once again, I go to the same thing: work on these things and not in them. And then you can strategize and pull yourself out of it and work on it. And it's all about attitude. It's all about how you handle the fear, how you handle rejection, how you handle good things, bad things in your life. And it's all about handling things. So once again, it's not the problem that's the problem. It's the way you handle the problem that's the problem. And some people don't have the mechanism to handle the problem well. And we need to give people tools to do that. And that's very important. Yeah.
Those are the kind of tools that you offer, Charissa.
Yes, and well said for what Jeff's saying. Is we need to ask ourselves, remember I said initially, fear is either real or imagined. And in order to gain control of it, we need to ask ourselves, is this a legitimate fear? Is this real or is this imagined? And then we take control of it. So if we go back to, I'm so scared I'm going to get COVID and I'm going shopping now and I'm so worried, right, I'm going to take control. I'll mask up. I'll do the sanitizer. I'll breathe. Whatever must be with me, I'm going to, take every single step and precaution. The same with flying. We can say people have a huge fear of flying. So it was the same. I was terrified. I was flying every single week years ago and terrified. I dig my nails into my hands that they were bleeding and I had to take control. What can I do? I have to make sure my will's in order, breathe, listen
and
to
that I'm in it. And that I'm in it, okay?
Yes. But you take certain steps and then comes to the point you just breathe and you hand over. But it's the steps that you take and then you have to let go. But obsessing about it is going to bring it to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do get it.
There's another thing, Rich. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, one of my friends, she's a hairdresser. So she had somebody come into the studio and she was touching her hair and cutting her hair and whatever. And the woman said, listen, I haven't been honest with you. I've got COVID. So she got completely fearful about this. I mean, she was absolutely devastated that she couldn't hardly work the next day. And she hadn't worked for the last 5 days since this woman had been there. And when she got hold of me and said, listen, what do I do? What do I do? I'm so scared. What is happening is people are getting incorrect information on a lack of information from the media. And they don't have enough knowledge to make a decision, and therefore you go into fear mode. So I said to her, look, if you haven't got anything for 4 days, if you don't have symptoms for 4 days, you should be fine. and the chances of you getting it touching someone's hair or cutting someone's hair, because it's transmitted with spittle and it's transmitted with droplets and that kind of stuff, is very, very good. So you're probably very good. She said, oh my God, I feel so much better now. And that is just information. And we're getting so much rubbish coming through Facebook, and people are reading this is right and that's wrong and that's right, that people don't understand anymore what the reality is, as Charissa said. And if you understand and you've got the information, you can make the right decisions, and then you're okay. If she just knew that after 4 days, if she wasn't symptomatic, she was pretty much okay, she wouldn't have been stressed on the 5th and the 6th day.
But the thing
So
about that
also,
the thing about that, sorry, Jeff, the thing about that is if nobody had told her that, she would have continued to stress, and the chances are, is the right term psychosomatic? She would have got symptoms.
Absolutely. And she was getting them. In fact,
Yeah.
you're so right. She was getting, she had a tickly throat, and she said, oh
You
my God.
imagine these things, yeah.
Yeah, you imagine it. And
Yeah.
a tickly throat, anybody can get it. You can have
Yeah.
coffee and you can get it. And then all of a sudden, oh my word. And she was so paranoid about having it because she touched someone's hair, and she didn't have the information that isn't how you transmit COVID. And so it's important for us to learn and go to the right sources. Don't listen to Marge Hill in America, who's whatever. Talk to doctors, virologists, specialists, and read that. Go to the internet and find out what the medical association is saying or the health department is saying, not what somebody says on Facebook, because that is really dangerous sometimes as well.
But if you're worried about this from a sort of headspace point of view, Charissa's right there. You can speak to her. She's going to help with that, because she's not going to deal with the COVID illness. She's going to deal with the fact that you might not go down that road. In other words, she would deal with what you said to your friend. Don't worry about it. This is how it is. Oh, there's a question on the Facebook here. Says, loving the discussion. Andrew, thank you very much. He says, I don't know if we're going to have time to answer this, but we're certainly going to try. What about phobias? Fears that are truly uncontrollable. People couldn't control those fears as they are completely irrational. What do we do then?
That is a very good point. I want to go back, and before we look at phobias, since this is another whole show, but that's a brilliant question. I'm going to answer it now. I want to just go back when we're talking about fearfulness and COVID, before we look at phobias. We've got to be mindful all the time, which I haven't been. So if we're going to go into a shop and we're actually going to, buy things and go into the grocery, which I still love to do, I'm not going to order online. We've got to be very careful. Here I was, we're touching stuff, we're doing stuff. Oh, got something in my eye. And then I'm like, Charissa, what are you doing? And then the other day I had the mask on, and like, me and my cats, there's a cat here in. So I take the fingers and those are two things we're not being mindful without thinking. There's a cat hair here, and I stick my finger in my eye. We've got to be just very careful as long as we are aware all the time. Now, phobias, oh my gosh. And that's a brilliant question, because it's linked to all our fears as well. But there's something called desensitization. So if you've got a phobia about spiders, that's a whole cognitive psychology, and it's a different thing. You have to address it. We have to put the spider near you. We have to breathe. We have to meditate. We have to look at the blood pressure. That is quite a long, tedious thing to look at.
It's different to what we're talking about now, but it is an irrational fear. We are talking more about rational fear.
Yes. And then look how it starts. So why are you scared of spiders? Well, one crawled over my face when I was, a kid, and one bit me, and one, okay, that's rational. Now you have a reason to be. But just, I don't like them because they all flutter around and they're creepy. That's an, irrational one. But the fear of jumping, the fear of heights, these are linked to fears and have to be dealt with very, very sensitively. Otherwise, they get linked to, again, PTSD. Post-traumatic stress.
But they're very real for those people.
Yes.
I mean, people who don't like snakes, people who don't like spiders. I mean, there's the interesting thing about phobias. There's so many interesting things. People who don't like flying, you mentioned before. These things are so real to these people. I mean, this is real.
Yes, but then that's how we come to the cognitive behavioral modification, changing it, because it doesn't necessarily have to be. We have to get the person over the fear, step by step, small steps.
Yep. Good
because
question.
for outside people looking at it, it's imagined, unless something drastic has happened to cause you to
But that would require sort of ongoing treatment, consultation, and probably a longer term solution. What we're talking about this afternoon is simply the fear of COVID, the fear of, and specifically COVID, because that's where we're at. That fear, we must not let that fear dominate, because if we do, we must be reasonable about how we approach it, but not become paranoid about it, because the minute we do that, we start to impact one aspect of our physical being the immune system, and then we make ourselves susceptible to that or anything else. And that's outside of all the other 20 things that you mentioned that could be affected.
Yes, absolutely. And we haven't touched on relationships. If I'm fearful and I'm in the stage of high anxiety and oh God, and you come home, then your partner's in there. Where have you been? Have you showered? Have you washed your hands? Have you, and then we start impacting our family, and we start taking, of course, we take it out on the people closest to us. So these fears get kind of projected onto others around us.
I get asked that question all the time, and it's got nothing to do with COVID.
I think you're used to it then. It's
I'm already used to that.
But also these things, I mean, you come home and you've got issues, not only COVID, I mean, your business isn't running well. Your staff are stressed. The money's not coming in. Nobody's booking flights anymore, and you've got a travel agency, and now you need to draw money on your capital, which is actually your retirement funding, and now there's all that kind of fear that comes in, and you start building, and then you can't sleep. And Charissa will tell you how important sleep is. And then now you're not sleeping, and then you're going to go down another path of sickness again.
Yeah. So
you've got to be really careful. Yeah.
So what we're saying is, I mean, I said earlier on that it's about COVID that we're talking, and we mustn't have this irrational fear of COVID. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we should manage fear in such a way so that whatever the fear is, whether it's a fear of our business going to the wall, whether it's a fear of walking out and getting hit by a bus, that fear we need to manage, because if we don't manage that fear, we're then going to put our systems, our physical being, into a state where we could open ourselves up to infection by COVID or anything else for that matter. Is that what is that the right summary? Exactly. Did I get it?
Yes, you got it. And what I want to say is that smart fear. The smart fear makes us prepare. We will prepare. Heaven forbid I get it, I'm prepared. Someone will deliver food to my 86-year-old mom. This is what happened. I'm prepared. Now I can let it go. That's smart fear versus phobias or other old fears. Is that making sense?
No, it all makes sense. It all makes sense. Everything you say makes sense, Charissa. Everything you say makes sense. I'm just saying.
Thank you. Also, just to talk about some positive thoughts quickly. The mind is like a book or a bank. We've got to be very, very careful what we deposit into that bank. Positive thoughts about it all the time. We can't keep putting in the negative. We've got to look at it in terms of strengthening our mind power.
Yeah, and I think as well, if you can use a few tools, like I've got a big thing about using sense of humor with everything, and everybody thinks I joke about everything, but it's my way of coping with things. Sense of humor is one way of doing it. And working on something is another way of doing it. Surrounding yourself with positivity and positive people is another thing that you can use to keep yourself heightened and whatever. And I try and post things on my social media that are positive, that are inspiring, that make people laugh maybe or whatever. And so I try and keep those untoxic people around me as much as I possibly can, because otherwise things do get to me, because I'm in an industry that people are suffering in, and they're getting sick and all of that stuff. So I've got to be very, very careful as well how to look after my surroundings and my environment. And I think people can do that together at home as a family. You can have a TV evening, you can have a pizza night together, you can have a bride together, and don't talk about the fearful stuff. Talk about good things. Talk about the future holidays we're going to have in a year's time, and how different it's going to be, and whatever. And try and bring a uplift of vibration in a family. And I think that'll help a hell of a lot to control the fear. Charissa?
I love that. But to turn this upside down, there's also the positive fear in that little voice that reminds you, don't walk in this dark street. Look behind you. You know that intuition is also just connected to fear. I shouldn't be what it is, especially for us women. So fear can also be, if you tune into it and be mindful that it's there, it also can guide you. but not take over.
Yeah,
That's the thing. The lesson this afternoon is don't let it take over and use those tools that Jeff was talking about. I know Twitter just did that. They took Donald Trump off Twitter, and I mean, all of a sudden the world's a better place. Yeah, I think it's a question of making sure that you understand the fear, as you mentioned, being prepared to deal with it, and then making sure that you don't let that dominate for fear of, maybe that's not the right terminology now that I think about it, but for fear of having the psychosomatic or the psychological then manifest itself physically in one's body with all those conditions, including immune system deficiencies and the like.
Yeah, and one of the other things you can do is talk about it. If there's something you're really scared about, don't keep it to yourself, because it manifests within yourself. So if you're scared of something, or you're fearful of something, or you're fearful that your partner is taking strain, talk to them about it. Charissa will back me up here, because she's always saying communicate, communicate, communicate. Talk to each other about it. Speak to the kids about it. Find out what the kids are scared of, if anything. You know, they're going to school and they're getting sprayed down before they get into the gate. Is that fearful for them, or is it fun, or do they understand what it's all about? And also in your relationships at home. I mean, talk to each other about what happened during the day. What are you fearful about? Oh, don't worry, love, that's fine. We'll sort that out together. You just need to do this and do that. So just help each other along. As many people as you can help and create that environment. And then it sort of diminishes the fear. It waters it down a little bit. And that's what you can cope with. You can't cope with this huge mountain, but these small little hills you can cope with.
Good advice. Really good advice. I think what's this thing called Zoom is going to switch us off in a moment.
Okay. Can I say something really, if we get nothing out of this, it's what I've said earlier when we were here. Just know you're the gatekeeper of your thoughts and your own emotions. So remember that that's powerful. You can get carried away by the thoughts in your head, I'm so scared, and be the victim, or you are the gatekeeper of your own thoughts and emotions, and you are in control of that. Einstein used 10% of his intelligence. We're sitting on 2. Use your mind power to control it.
You would think that a guy like with his intelligence, Einstein, you would think a guy with that intelligence would get a decent haircut. But anyway, that's just me.
No, your haircut as well, yes.
But I'm only using 2%, Jeff. I don't use 10%. You know what I mean? Listen, thank you both for your time this afternoon. We're going to do this again next month. Hopefully next month you'll be able to come and sit here, because I much prefer. Although maybe we can do Jeff on Zoom and Charissa, you can come and sit here. All right. Our internet is unstable at the moment, and it looks like I'm going to have to say goodbye. Listen, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We'll do this again and again. Thanks to the guys at Spa Distribution for allowing you to use their unstable internet connection. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting us. Thank you for the good work. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your time and sharing your expertise. All right, I'm going to play out with the song for you. I'm going to play out with Tears for Fears. Okay. And sometimes the best thing to do is probably just shout. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers, bud.
Thank you. Bye-bye.